Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on COVID-19 guidance for early learning and care contractors. This webinar is being presented by the California Department of Education's Early Learning and Care Division and Fiscal and Administrative Services Division. This webinar is being held on November 6, 2020, and is scheduled to run from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. We want to thank you for taking some time out of your morning to join us for this webinar. For those who may not know me, my name is Steve Profiter, and I'm the Director of the Early Learning and Care Division at the California Department of Education. And I'll just take a moment to say happy Friday. Welcome back to our weekly webinar series. We've been having these now for a few months, and we'll continue to as long as needed. At that point, we'll reevaluate the need and frequency, but we'll keep you updated all along the way. Though we know this is a marathon, and while we'd like to say we're hitting mile 26, the reality is we're probably a ways away from the finish line. Rest assured, we're in it for the long haul, and we appreciate you joining us each week. We don't always enjoy the information we share, all of it. Family fees and CCTR expansion come to mind here, at least to date, but we're committed to bringing you the best information we have as soon as we can. I'd like to acknowledge that we are still in the midst of a historic vote. Each election feels crucial, but this one feels a bit more crucial. I appreciate everyone who voted and exercised their civic right. It's sad there's still many places where voter suppression is exercised. Everyone's vote counts, and we appreciate everyone who came out to vote. Coming back to the webinar, we have a team this morning as usual, monitoring questions and working to provide as many answers as possible in real time. While we try to address as many questions as possible, we won't be able to get to all, but we will do our absolute best. And speaking of the team at CDE, this is a multidisciplinary team made up of early educators, fiscal, and data specialists that are here for one reason: to support children, families, and you. This team, whether they're working on this webinar or in their day-to-day work, are committed to this labor of love. I've said it before, but it bears repeating. These are some of the greatest and most passionate people I've had the privilege to work with, and we're all here to support you in the best way we can. Now, with the holidays just around the corner, and here I'm going to do my best to channel Erica, who isn't able to join us this morning, we want to take a moment to appreciate all of you. It's a time to be thankful, and we at CDE want to thank all of you as you continue to rise to the challenge in the face of additional adversity, because you do it for the love of children and families. We appreciate all of you persisting and working to the best of your abilities to support children and families. We see you, we hear you, and we will be here to continue to support you. Now, this year has been an education and resilience for us all. We were forced to be resourceful at a level we never imagined at the beginning of the year. For instance, the policy office has provided more guidance this year alone, and it's hard to imagine we're 8 months into COVID times. Additionally, the Program Quality Implementation Office, which provides program support, has been adapting to the circumstances as well. We've had, in addition to the policy office providing guidance, we've had all teams, including our PQI team, our Learning Innovation and Improvement team, our Fiscal and Administrative Services, Child Development and Nutrition Fiscal Services Office. All the teams, all in on providing guidance. Today, Lisa Velarde, the administrator in PQI, will provide the PQI update. But first, I will turn it over to Virginia Early, the administrator in the policy office.
Hi, everyone. I'm Virginia Early, administrator for the Early Learning and Care Division's policy office here at CDE. As Steve said, thank you so much for all of your engagement in our policy process and for everything you do for children and families. My office, for those of you who aren't aware, is lead over issuing all the guidance. And as you know, there's been a lot of it. And also working with the legislature and the administration to ensure that priorities and needs from the field are addressed and elevated. So in a bit, I'll go over some of the ongoing guidance work that we have going on. But before we get there, I'll turn it over to Alana Andrade, who is our moderator today.
Thank you, Virginia. Good morning, everybody. And it's also really nice to see all the good mornings and happy Fridays in the chat and on the Q&A. So I am a child development consultant in the policy office here at ELCD. I work with Virginia, and I'll be your moderator and I'll continue to be your moderator for these webinars. And today, helping to answer your questions from the policy office as well, we have Danielle Davis. From the program Quality Implementation Office, we have Cassandra Lewis, Mai Zhang, Jir Zhang, Richard Miller, Christina Tony, and Serene Yi. From the Child Development, Nutrition, and Fiscal Services, CDNFS, we have Andrea Johnson, Corey Kahn, and Alan Lynch. From the Child Development Management Implementation System, CDMIS, we have Robert Hom and Carly Nodahara. And from the Nutrition Service Division today, we have Joseph McCormack. So thank you for being here with us today. And as Stephen said earlier, our team is committed to being as responsive as possible to all of the questions that we receive in the Q&A feature. We won't be able to get to all. Nonetheless, we will do our absolute best. At the end of the presentation, we'll be answering some questions aloud. Some of those questions are from this morning's webinar, and some of them will be from our ELCD emergency inbox. You can always write to elcdemergency@cde.ca.gov. You know, we're checking that inbox daily, and thank you, Mai, for putting that into the chat for us. If we're unable to provide an answer to your question by the end of the hour, all the questions in the Q&A feature will still be captured and then turned into a frequently asked question onto our webpage. And now I'd invite Stephen back to review our agenda.
Thanks, Alana. I was just perusing the questions and answer, or the questions that are coming in. So, as we mentioned on each of our webinars, we continue to work on the guidance since the signing of Senate Bill 820. We've released a number of management bulletins and continue to work on additional guidance. For today's webinar, we're going to provide you with a status update on the ongoing CDE guidance work in terms of not just what we're working on, but what's ahead, so you know where we are. We'll also be providing program quality implementation and fiscal updates. I'd like to note that in the fiscal updates, we'll be covering reporting. This area has been a theme in many of your questions, and we've seen a couple in the questions this morning. So we'll be addressing that more in depth today. As we normally do, we'll take questions in addition to working through live questions as we're presenting. We'll start with some questions that have come into our ELCD emergency email box. And while we won't be able to get through everything, we'll do our best to address as much as we can. You may also use, as many have already, the Q&A function in Zoom to put your questions in. We'll do our best, again, to address as many as possible, but whatever we don't get back to, we'll take back to address in FAQs on our website. And before I turn over to Virginia, I'd also just, Alana mentioned that Joe Cormack from the Nutrition Services Division is with us, so we're thrilled to have that partnership here, additional partnership in CDE. We do work a bit with the Nutrition Services Division, so we're thrilled to have somebody from that team join us today. And now I'll go to Virginia, who will talk about our ongoing CDE guidance work.
Thanks, Stephen, and thanks again, everybody. So, upcoming guidance from CDE, CDE's upcoming guidance. We know that this is something everybody is very eagerly watching. So again, my name is Virginia, and I'm going to give you an update on that. As you know, we've been working diligently to release guidance to the field as quickly as possible. So one of the things that you can expect coming up very soon is guidance on non-COVID-19 emergency closures. This management bulletin will give guidance on all those emergency closures that may occur from non-COVID-19 related issues, such as a fire, a flood, or earthquakes. Once we release this management bulletin, we'll discuss in greater detail. We expect this management bulletin to be released early next week, so we're expecting to be able to discuss this in greater detail on next week's webinar and answer any questions you may have. The other sort of big pending thing in terms of guidance is many of you may have seen articles in the news or heard about an additional $110 million in coronavirus relief funding from the federal government, or CRF funds. The governor and the legislature have worked to identify this additional $110 million supporting and addressing some needs in the early learning and care field. So this includes addressing waived family fees, and we'll be doing this in a revision to our Management Bulletin 2019, and costs for school-aged children served. So at this point, just to sort of talk you through where this is in the process, the governor and the legislature worked to identify the funds. And as part of this process, the legislature approved the governor's plans in a letter towards the end of October, and the governor signed an executive order to get the wheels in motion. And so, as I shared before, our understanding from these documents is that the goal of the funding is to address the continuing impact that COVID has had on waived family fees and the cost for the school-aged children served. We greatly appreciate both the legislature and the governor for identifying these additional resources, since we know that it's been very difficult for providers to absorb waived family fees. And we also know that contractors have been serving substantially more school-aged children for longer periods of time during the day in subsidized childcare programs because we've had closures of public schools across the state. We know that this has created a shortfall of funds for many contractors, and contractors have considered terminating families because of this. So let me talk through our implementation of these additional funds. So CDE is currently working with the Department of Finance and the administration on the specifics of these funds and the path forward to get them out the door. We're actually talking to them later today, right after this webinar. So please note that we CDE have actually not received the money yet, and there's still a number of internal state accounting things that need to be worked out before the money actually gets to CDE. And then working on the allocations to you. So just note that while we work on obtaining these funds, we will simultaneously work on the guidance related to them so that things can be moved as quickly as possible. We will continue to update you with more information as soon as we have it. And we do plan to provide an update on the status of all of this at our weekly webinar next week. In terms of, I briefly mentioned the family fees guidance will likely almost certainly come in the form of releasing an update to Management Bulletin 2019, which will specify the details for that. As for the other pieces around this funding addressing the cost for school-aged children served, this newly allocated funding would address disenrollment of children who are funded under contracts like CAP. So until we release more information about the allocation, please, please, please do not disenroll children because you're over-earning your contract due to these issues with the school-aged children being served. So that is all I have for upcoming guidance. Of course, if you have any questions about anything I just said, put it in the Q&A feature and we'll work to address it. And now on to Lisa for our program quality implementation update.
Thank you, Virginia. Good morning to each of you, and I hope this finds you all doing well on this Friday. I have two updates from the Program Quality Implementation Office. One is about our upcoming trainings, and two about the CFAs. First, we are pleased to share with you our upcoming trainings that will be taking place through a training series via Zoom. An email announcement will be coming out today, so stay tuned for that. So coming up on November 10th from 1 to 4 by invitation only, and by that we mean this is for contractors that are scheduled for a review. The audience is for contractors selected for the FY 2021 monitoring review. It will be a two-part series from 1 to 4 o'clock, with the first part being remote monitoring. And the second part, after a break, of course, will be how to get ready for a review using the instrument. On November 18th, we will be offering 2 sessions on certification, recertification, notice of action, and data collection during a pandemic. On Wednesday, November 18th from 10 to 1, the session will be from direct service programs. And on Wednesday afternoon, on the next slide, we have on November 18th from 1 to 4, the training session will focus on certification, recertification, and notice of actions, again, in a virtual environment for 8 alternative payment programs. Again, the certification guidance will provide instructions and criteria for eligibility requirements, criteria required for documentation of eligibility, certification and recertification of families, calculation of fees and adjusted monthly income, and certifying families remotely. So we hope you join us in November for those training sessions. Then upcoming on December the 9th from 10 to 12, we have a training on the Improper Payments Elimination and Recovery Improvement Act. And this training will increase participants' knowledge on the laws and the process of IPERIA, for short. And in addition, participants will receive the results of the most recent IPERIA review and our plans to reduce the current error rate and next steps. Finally, to close up December, we are pleased to offer from 10 to 1 a welcome and introduction and orientation for new contractors. And this also includes new directors are also invited. In this training, we will assist new contractors in gaining knowledge on the ELD fiscal and programmatic requirements. And we will also have staff from other areas, including audits, child development and nutrition fiscal services, child development management information systems, as we fondly know as CDMIS, and also staff from our Program Quality Improvement Office. So we hope you will join us on those dates this fall. On our next slide, we have, stay tuned, because coming in 2021, we have other trainings in the work right now. And these include maintaining program quality during a pandemic, as well as we will also be convening regional cafes in each of our regions that will be convened by both our administrators and our consultant staff. And additionally, we'll offer another 2-part session on remote monitoring, as well as offering a training on program self-evaluations. So that's just for starters for 2021. So again, stay on the lookout for an announcement today, and updates also coming into 2021 for additional trainings. So that is part 1 of my update. And going on to the next slide for part 2, continued funding applications. I would just like to take this opportunity to remind all of our contractors that fiscal year 21-22 continued funding applications are due next Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. Even the newly awarded agencies are required to complete this process. If you have not yet submitted your CFA, please do so by Tuesday. Remember, this year you are able to submit the CFA by email. If you have any issues submitting your CFA, please refer to Management Bulletin, or MB 20-16, which has instructions. You may also look at the FAQs, our frequently asked questions, and an instructional video, or you're always welcome to contact us at cfa@cde.ca.gov. Thank you so much, and hope these 2 updates were helpful for all of you. Take good care, and now I turn this back over to Stephen and Corey.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. I'll acknowledge on the last slide, a date that we're going to fix. It says Tuesday, November 11th, but as Lisa said, it's Tuesday, November 10th. So the date on the slides should say Tuesday, November 10th. November 11th is, of course, Veterans Day. And yeah, so, and that is a Wednesday. So thank you. And we can, perfect, thank you. So many of you have been asking about the status of CCTR expansion funding for a few months now. To take a step back here, this year CCTR expansion as well as a share of alternative payment contracts were funded in part with Proposition 64 funds. By law, Proposition 64 funds are held by the Department of Healthcare Services, so not by the CDE. In state government, CDE doesn't have the authority to distribute funds that are held by another agency. They have to come to us through an interagency agreement. So as soon as we learned that CCTR expansion and some AP funding was going to be supported with Proposition 64 funds, we started working with the other agency on that interagency agreement to get the funding. It's been a long road, and the CDE team has been working hard to push through this interagency agreement. For our part, we've been done for a little while now and have been pushing to get this wrapped up and to get the funding at CDE so that, of course, we can get the funding to programs where it's desperately needed. So in short, we are closer than we have been before. I recognize that's not satisfactory, but as we move forward and we think about the transition as these funds will be with CDSS next year, rest assured, we are flagging this as an issue, at least the mechanism, and we'll be working on a better solution to move funds between departments. And with that, Corey will now discuss the fiscal pieces of the expansion funding.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Corey Kahn, and I'm from the Child Development and Nutrition Fiscal Services Unit, which we often reference as CDNFS for short. So as Steve said, I'll just jump right in to provide you with some of the fiscal aspects of the CCTR expansion funding and where we're at with that. So fiscal analysts from CDNFS should have already been in contact with all of our contractors who received a CCTR expansion award letter. And new contractors should have already received a welcome packet from their fiscal analysts that provided detail of what to expect when contracting with the California Department of Education, any next steps, and then the process to put funding into contract. So that was probably sent quite a few months ago now, but you can refer to that email as well. And those were sent to new contractors. So prior to funds being put into contract, contractors must provide a copy of their license to their fiscal analysts. Funds are never placed into contract without a license being obtained, unless the contractor is a local educational agency who is exempt from licensure. And additionally, both new and existing contractors who received expansion funding are eligible for up to 15% in startup costs. Startup costs, what those do, they recognize that a new or an expanded program may not have sufficient enrollment during the first contract period while the program is starting up. And so we realize that, you know, you still may be incurring costs at a higher level that are reimbursable. So Education Code Section 8275 allows for up to 15% of the annualized award amount to be paid for startup without providing services. So in fiscal year 2021, you may have heard through some of our last webinars, you know, many webinars that we've done, that this year reimbursement doesn't consider enrollment levels, and therefore contractors should be reaching out to discuss with their fiscal analysts whether they would benefit from a startup allowance this year. So that's a little different from previous years, mostly because how our contracts are earned this year. So lastly, a revised program calendar may need to be submitted to the program consultant if the calendar does not reflect the date you actually began or plan to begin providing services to children. Once a copy of the license or license exempt documentation has been provided to the fiscal analyst and a program calendar has been approved by the program consultant, funding will be issued through a contract, and contractors will receive a contract for new contractors, or it would be a contract amendment for existing CCTR contractors. So if you're an existing CCTR contractor who already has a CCTR contract and also got this award, we will issue those additional funds through a contract amendment. So I'm going to hand it back to Steve, and he'd like to say just a little bit more about the funding.
Thank you, Corey. Sorry about that. So one thing that I'd like to add before we move off this slide is that we caution any organization that receives an award for funding to not begin expending funds or enrolling families. At least until you receive the contract. One of the risks that occur before a contract is issued is funding and the timing for when it will be in the contractor's hands. I know it's taken a longer time than it really should to get these funds out, and this is a field. This is a community that wants more than anything to support children and families. But I urge you to make sure you have a contract in hand before you begin enrolling families with these funds. And now I'll pass the baton, so to speak, back to Virginia and Corey.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve and Corey. So we wanted to provide you with an interim directive on what to do with school-age children in our California State Preschool Programs, or CSPP as we call it. So many of you have asked us, what do we do with children who are age eligible for transitional kindergarten or kindergarten who were enrolled in CSPP last year and wish to continue to be served? It could be because their school is only providing distance learning or for some other reason. So we wanted to let you know we have a forthcoming management bulletin, as it says on the slide, but wanted to put a slide together with some interim directives for you while we continue to work this out. Because many of you have asked us, well, how does this interact with 12-month eligibility and all of that? So here's our CDE directive until CDE issues further guidance. First of all, do not disenroll these TK or kindergarten eligible children from CSPP, so continue to serve them. Second of all, do not enroll any more of them. So do not enroll any additional TK or kindergarten age eligible children into CSPP. So when making enrollments, please refer to the age definitions in your funding terms and conditions and program requirements. That's what you should refer to when you're enrolling any additional TK or kindergarten age eligible children. I'm sorry, that's what you should refer to when enrolling any CSPP children. Please do not enroll any additional TK or kindergarten age eligible children. Please continue to recertify families as normal, except please hold off on recertifying any families who have children that are TK or kindergarten eligible. So those older 5-year-olds. In terms of reporting, we realize that our CDMIS 801A data does not allow currently contractors to report these TK and kindergarten age eligible children on the 801A report. However, please continue to report all other children and families and submit the 801A report as you normally would. We're currently working through in CDE how we would collect data from you on the numbers of children that fall into this TK or kindergarten age eligible bucket. And so we'll be providing more guidance about how you can submit information for those children to us in the future. So I will now briefly turn it over to Corey. Really quickly on the 801A. If you have any questions about the 801A and what to report, please feel free to put any of those questions in the Q&A chat. They are here and monitoring that. And you can also email them, and they will put their email box in the chat box below, so you can pull that out. So I'm now going to turn it over to Corey to discuss how contractors can report these children on the Child Development and Nutrition Fiscal Services Attendance and Fiscal Reports.
So thank you, Virginia. During this time period, contractors who continue to have age-eligible TK children enrolled in their preschool program can continue to report them on our CDNFS attendance and fiscal report. And contractors will report these children under the 3 years and older category. So if they are TK eligible, but they're still in CSPP, please report them as 3 years and older. And then Virginia, I think you wanted to come back in to say a few additional things. Yes, thank you. So just to recap, so Corey said what it is for the CDNFS forms, and as I mentioned, we're still investigating our options on the 801 side of the house for collecting data and information from all of you about these children, and we'll let you know when we determine what the steps for that will be. So we continue to work very carefully and closely on all of this. We are working on guidance through a forthcoming management bulletin. So thank you for your patience. This one has just been it's been very complicated to navigate the different questions that we've gotten and navigate the different needs and laws. So I will now turn it back over to Corey for the next slide. Okay, thanks. So now I'm just going to briefly touch on a few emails that were released probably in the last couple weeks, one being this week. And it talked about different reporting requirements and some reminders. So on on October 27th, the California Department of Education released an email to those subscribed to the Early Learning and Care Distribution List, informing state preschool, so CSPP, general child care, CCTR, migrant child care, CMIG, and family child care, CFCC contractors, that the CDE received $4.2 million to provide direct service contractors with additional funds to cover the loss in income incurred by contractors as a result of waived family fees in July and August. So direct service contractors in this email were notified that CDNFS would be utilizing the information reported on the new line that we added this year entitled Waived Family Fees for Certified Children, July and August. And that's what the line that we will use to allocate these funds. So as a reminder, contractors who have not submitted their report or need to submit a revision to any previously submitted data must do so by close of business today. So that's what the listserv had mentioned on October 27th. So be sure to review whatever you have submitted, ensure that it's correct on that line, and then if there are any changes, you can make them by this afternoon. So we also released a subsequent email on November 4th, I believe that was Wednesday, reminding contractors of the deadline to submit their monthly or quarterly attendance and fiscal report for September. So that September report was due October 20th. And CSPP, CCTR, CMIG, health and safety training activities, that's the CHST, the Child Care Initiative Project or CCIP, and the local Child Care and Development Planning Council or CLPC. Oh, and one more, the Pre-Kindergarten Family Literacy Support, CPKS. So those contract types and I'll repeat it again. So it's CSPP, CCTR, CMIG, CHST, CCIP, CLPC, and CPKS contractors. We're required to submit their reports online through what we call the Child Development Provider Accounting Reporting Information System. We also call that CPARIS. And we noticed that there was a number of contractors who had yet to submit their September report, or they failed to complete the certification of assurances, which is a required document that must be on file prior to certifying any attendance and fiscal report through the system. So the certification of assurances is only, the requirement is that you complete it once per fiscal year. And it's a statement that acknowledges that the electronic certification of reports by the authorized representative replaces any, official wet signature that previously was on any hard copy paper submission. And so that serves as our method of ensuring that any reported data received has been approved by the authorized representative at that agency. So per the 2021 funding terms and conditions, the CDE is required to withhold any scheduled apportionment payment when contractors have not submitted an acceptable report on or before that due date. So that due date was October 20th. However, in this November 4th email, we inform contractors that in an effort to provide contractors with additional time to adjust to this new online reporting system and to minimize the fiscal impacts on early learning and care programs, CDNFS would be processing an additional batch of payments today. So in order to ensure that contractors receive their December 2020 apportionment payment timely, contractors were notified in that email that they must have submitted their September attendance and fiscal report no later than yesterday. So that is just a reminder that that email went out. That doesn't mean that we will still process payments. It's just that timing. We always try to get advance to all contractors prior to the month starting. And so that will ensure, if you had it in by yesterday, even maybe today, maybe this morning, it could get onto that December authorization, and you should hopefully receive that payment prior to December starting. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe, who is from our Nutrition Services Division, who will discuss any or all of the nutrition services updates that we have.
Good morning, everybody. It is great to be with you. I'm Joe. As I suspect many of you know, I've been affiliated with Nutrition Services for a while. I've been the manager over the Child and Adult Care Food Program team for 5 years and counting, and I now also oversee the Summer Food Service Program in part. So it's really great to be with you all. And I'm happy to provide some updates. And this is really just skimming the surface of everything that's going on as it relates to nutrition services. I know a lot of you have had questions about the certification process for the meal benefit forms that you obtain from your families so that you can determine their eligibility for the CSCFP. And so I wanted to just touch on that today. And feel free, as others have said, to follow up with us with any questions or concerns you want to raise our way in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to get to those. If we can't during this hour, certainly we'll make sure that something is provided to you after the webinar today. So briefly, as it concerns the USDA waivers that are in place for the CSCFP, I wanted to just first remind you all, I think this is a reminder for the vast majority of you who participate in this program. There's a string of waivers out there that are going to cover us for the remainder of the school year. That includes the at-risk area eligibility waiver, the meal times waiver, in addition to the waivers for non-congregate feeding and parent pickup. All of that expires at the end of June 2021, so June 30th, 2021. We are not expecting, this is highly subject to change, of course, but we are not expecting the USDA to release any other CSCFP centric, if you will, waivers at this time. There's no indication that there's anything else forthcoming. And as it relates to the meal pattern, excuse me, the meal benefit form in particular, and I know that this is something that a lot of you have expressed concern over, there is no waiver for obtaining, for offering the meal benefit form to your families. So that way you can determine their eligibility in the program. That has not been waived. That requirement is still in effect, but I want to be crystal clear. You are only on the hook for ensuring that you have distributed those forms to your families. The families do not have to return those forms to you. And if they don't, rest assured, you will still be able to receive some form of reimbursement for those families, because they would then, in this scenario, fall into the lowest reimbursement category for the CSCFP. It's what we refer to as the paid or base reimbursement category. So again, just to recap, you are not obligated in any way, shape, or form to collect the meal benefit forms. You just have to distribute it to your participating households. And we are having internal discussions around whether we want to submit a waiver for that for the state to the USDA. That has not been resolved as of yet, but that is a flexibility that we are entertaining at this time. And so if we have any updates on that, certainly we will notify all of our participating contractors of that development. So that covers the meal benefit form. I know that that was one of the sort of hotter topics that we wanted to discuss during today's webinar. Getting back to just other waivers, we did notice that there was a little bit of concern about whether there's a home delivery option for CSCFP. And I just want to very clearly state that that is a component of the non-congregate feeding waiver. There are no strings attached to that except you have to make sure that you have obtained written consent from all of your households in order to pursue those home deliveries. So you need to document that you have that consent. And then you also, it's kind of a two-parter, you have to make sure that you get your CDE, CSCFP specialist approval to proceed. And that is a very quick verification that can happen through email. Just informing your specialist that you have obtained the requisite consent and you're good to go on that front. And they'll give you a thumbs up electronically. But you got to make sure that you have gotten all of that in writing before you can proceed with the home delivery option that falls under the non-congregate waiver. And to be clear also, none of these waivers I'm talking about, you actually have to submit a formal application for. They are just voluntary. There's no sign-up process required except for area eligibility if you're doing at risk, except for the meal pattern. Those are being approved on a case-by-case basis. Everything else, the whole world of CSCFP waivers, but for those two, you do not have to submit a formal application for. Okay, and then I think there was lastly a little bit of a concern about what do we do when we have families that are wanting to take meals home. Is that allowed? Are there certain things that we need to be aware of in accommodating families who want to be able to take meals home? And I just wanted to say that certainly under the non-congregate waiver, a lot of you are probably already offering something in the way of a grab and go distribution service. In that scenario, under that model, it's sort of automatically established that because it's just they're coming for the meals and they're taking off, that just assumes that the offsite consumption is available. So it's certainly allowed within that model if you're opting into the non-congregate waiver. No issues there. And if someone is coming for meals, let's say that they have a setup where they're able to consume the breakfast and the lunch on site, but they do wish to take, for example, the PM snack home, that's also completely allowed as we go through this whole situation with the pandemic and we have these waivers in effect. So definitely something available to you. If there are any questions about this, because I know there's a lot to navigate in terms of these waivers and the various requirements pertaining to the CSCFP and other programs in general, of course, reach out to me if you know how to get a hold of me. If you know how to get a hold of your CDE, CSCFP specialist, definitely utilize them because they are your primary points of contact for the CSCFP. And I'll ensure that the early learning team with whom we partner on a lot of things make the links available to you all, so that way you have that URL available to you and you can navigate to see who is actually covering your region for the food program. One other thing I will say before I pass this over to Alana or Steve for a wrap up is we are in the process of updating our county analyst contact sheet that we have online. We're just going through a huge transition here as we kind of peel away from our renewal process and deal with the pending move to the Department of Social Services. So we've had to redirect some staff and that has resulted in a big shift in our caseload. So all of that is being sort of given some finishing touches, but we should have all of that information online where it exists, fully updated within a week or so. And I think with that, I will turn this over to our facilitator, Steve or Alana, over to you.
That'll be me. Thank you so much, Joe, for that great presentation. We're so happy that you were able to join us today. So now look, our favorite part, which is elevating your questions. There's been a lot of specific questions around the TK and CSPP. So I'm going to begin our Q&A with a few of those. So I'd like to invite Virginia. So if we have a CSPP, hi. If we have a CSPP family eligible for recertification, do we move them into CCTR to complete the recert or completely hold off on it?
So thanks so much for that question, Alana. So for our contractors that have space in their CCTR contracts for school age, feel free to recertify them and move them over to your CCTR contract. Feel free to enroll kindergarten and TK eligible children into your school age CCTR contract. This interim directive that we provided earlier in the presentation, we really just don't want you to disenroll these children from CSPP if they're not being shifted into something else. However, if you are able to shift them into CCTR, you are able to recertify them and move them into CCTR, please do so. It's just that we want to issue this interim directive because we know not all of our contractors have a CCTR contract, or they might have a CCTR contract and it might not be a school age one. They might not have a school age part. or they might have one and there might not be room. And so that's sort of where we're coming from on these directives. So just to say it one more time, yes, if you do have space in your CCTR contract for the TK or kindergarten eligible children to shift over into, please do recertify and shift them over to that contract if you're able. However, if you don't have space, if you don't have a CCTR contract or don't have space in your CCTR contract to do a shift, please don't disenroll the children. However, don't enroll any additional and and please hold off on recertifying them. And Danielle, is there anything else that you want to add to what I just said?
Nope, I think that was clear and concise. Thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent. I know that we don't have as much time as we normally have for this. And since we have Joe here, who is not normally here, so Joe, there's a few questions that have popped in. And so I'd like to ask you to address. So one of them was, did I just hear that we do not have to collect meal pattern forms from our parents?
Well, meal benefit forms, I think, are what are meant here. The meal benefit forms, you have to distribute. That is a requirement, but you don't have to collect them. We're not, in other words, asking or holding agencies that are on the CACFP to kind of policing all of that activity. If you receive something, great. If you don't, it doesn't mean, as I was trying to describe, it doesn't mean that you're going to be without some form of reimbursement available to you.
Okay, excellent. And then in line with the meal benefit forms, there was a secondary question about, can we update the meal benefit forms by telephone without parent signatures?
Unfortunately not. That is a hard no. And, and I have to say, I'm glad the questioner brought this up. You can certainly try to obtain an e-signature. That is definitely a flexibility available to contractors, but there is no sort of over-the-phone verification that's available. Unfortunately, you have to get the family to somehow return something, whether it's via PDF or what have you, that has that electronic signature attached to it.
And does the electronic signature also consider if it's a wet signature that's then faxed back? Would that be sufficient?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, Joe. There's also still a lot of questions about recertification and about distance learning. A few of them seem very specific, so I do encourage you to reach out to your assigned regional consultant, and I'll ask that Mai put the website where the list of the regions and the assigned consultants are. And, you know, with 40 open questions and 6 minutes to go, we'll see how far we can get with this. Let's see. There were a lot of questions earlier in the beginning of the webinar with specifics about parent surveys and about the ITERs and the ECHRs. And so perhaps I don't see any of those questions out again, so they must have been answered. Again, I would ask that you reach out to your program quality implementation assigned regional consultant in order to get those questions answered as well. And before we go, I think there have also been some questions about the reviews that are coming up. So I'd like to ask Lisa to come back for a minute and just speak to how a contractor would know when their review is coming up and how to get training for the remote monitoring.
Oh, what a wonderful question. Thank you, Alana. Thank you very much. So our PQI office has already sent notifications to those contractors that are up for review this fiscal year. You should have already received that email. Secondarily, there will be an additional communication to the same contractor about the training that I just mentioned for November 10th. You will be invited to that. You will be given a Zoom link to link in to that training. And on that second communication you're about to receive, there will be more specific information for you to help you get ready for that review. We hope that you will join us on that training webinar on November 10th, because more specific guidance will be given to you for how we will be doing that remotely this year. And it will be a two-part session, as I noted earlier. So please do stay tuned for that information. It is forthcoming, so that you will be well prepared for your review. So hope that is helpful. And if you have any additional, more specific questions about your agency, it is always best to reach out to your PQI field consultant, and they'll be more than happy to provide any technical assistance to help you get ready for that review. So thank you for the question.
Excellent. Okay. So as we only have a few more minutes, I'm going to ask Eric to put the slide forward, and I will do all of our favorite parts and read off of our resources while our team continues to answer your questions in the Q&A box. So to find our webinar slides and past recordings of these webinars, our MVs, our frequently asked questions webpage, those can be found on our ELCD COVID-19 guidance webpage, which is at https://www.cde.ca.gov/SP/re/ELCD COVID-19.asp. As I mentioned earlier in the webinar, you may submit additional questions to our ELCD emergency email inbox, which is elcdemergency@cde.ca.gov. To contact your assigned PQI regional consultant, a list of those consultants can be found on the ELCD Consultant Regional Assignments webpage, which is at https://www.cde.ca.gov/SP/CI/assignment.asp. And please note that consultants are most easily reached by email. If there's still some, you would still prefer telephone, that telephone number is 916-322-6233. Next slide, please, Eric. Oh my goodness, that is a great photo. I would like to invite Stephen back to lead off our closing.
That is a great photo. I love the pictures of children at play. So thank you, Alana. On behalf of the team here at the California Department of Education, who are continuously working to give you the best information at a time when just frankly, information seems to be rapidly changing. We thank you for not just for taking your time out of your day to listen to this morning's webinar, but also for your patience. And we hope you'll join us for the next webinar. I do like to close by asking all of us to take care, be safe, and be kind. I also want to continue to add on that we need to all work to stop the spread of the coronavirus. You hear it all the time from public health departments, but please wear a face covering when you're out. We're heading into a flu season, and while California, in our collective efforts to stop the spread, have us in a better trend than the rest of the country seems to be, it's a credit to our collective efforts to stop the spread of the virus. So I just urge you to keep up, keep up the good work in that aspect. And with your continued efforts, we'll be together at the finish line at the end of this marathon. So thank you again for all of that. Thank you for joining us, and be well.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to ask that Eric keep this on for just another minute so that our team can get you last minute answers through the question and answer. And once again, The question and answers that have not been answered will be collected and will be turned into frequently asked questions. And we really appreciate your engagement today. You definitely kept us on our toes. So